We're here for a virtual career event, which we've called Marketing Yourself, Create a Brand that you're actually proud of. Our presenter is Pim Her, a 2013 grad, and I will send it over to her in just a minute after letting you all know that we all have lots of experience in different things. Just a few of Pim's is that she does a bit of design consulting, business strategy. She's a certified life coach. So those are a few of the things she brings to the table, and so much more. So I'm going to throw it over to her and keep letting people in the room so that we can learn and hear from you, Pim. So it's all you.
Woohoo. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you. I'm going to share my screen shortly, and I'll just say prepare for a couple of moments of engagement. You don't have to come on the camera for that, but would love to have y'all engage with us. So first things first, I'm going to share my screen, and one moment. We're going to get started with 4 deep breaths because I know some folks have been up if you've been on the East Coast, and then some folks are just getting up if you're on the West Coast. So let's start with just a couple of deep breaths first. So I'll leave you in the first 2, and then I'll let you carry on with the rest. So take a deep breath in and out. Just one more deep breath in and out. Coming back into your body, into this moment. Really allowing yourself to be here. And now continue to take a couple more deep breaths on your own. All right, so first off, I want to thank Jess for inviting me back. I really love being a part of our SU community and being a part of programs like this. Today, we're going to talk about marketing yourself, and in my own words, basically how to uncringe the cringe process. So creating a brand you're actually proud of, whether you are doing this on your LinkedIn or creating your own website, etc. It looks like we have a broad range of folks from different backgrounds, and so all of you may have very different reasons for why you may want to have a personal brand, some sort of a thought leadership kind of platform, but just wanted to really support all of you with this slide and this program. So one thing that we're going to do, again, I said I wanted some engagement. So I'm just going to show this slide and then this next slide. And I want to invite you for a moment for at least 1 or 2 people to come on the mic and tell me or tell us what makes these 2 slides different, because the content's the same, but something feels a little different about a purple versus a blue screen. So don't be shy. Come on, Mike. Tell us what's going on here.
I'm going to say that the purple felt a little more personal and artistic when the navy blue feels more corporate.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just looking to the side. I think that was Donna. I have 2 screens going on right here. Thank you for sharing. Exactly. Right. That buttoned up corporate feeling of this navy blue, it works if you want to come off very kind of like a supreme premium experience, very polished and buttoned up. And then on this side, where it looks a little more like a lilac purple, it feels more gentle, more calm and approachable, but definitely doesn't give the like, hey, we're serious here kind of vibe, right? And what I always say in coaching is it's not about what's right or wrong to others, it's what feels right for you. And that's a huge part of branding and marketing already, is just thinking about color theory and how different colors or maybe different fonts can help you present yourself in a very intentional way. So if you want to come off playful and friendly, maybe you would choose a lighter color like this. If you want to come off very impressive and polished, probably a darker navy blue would work for you. So this should give you a preview of the kinds of conversations we're going to have today. I'm going to jump in a little bit, and for anyone who's very type A like me at times, here is our 3 goals, objectives for the day. We're going to have a very quick intro where I just tell you a little bit about my background, just so you have a sense of why is Pim on this stage talking to us, this, I guess, metaphorical stage. And then we're going to really go into the meat of the conversation, focusing on brand marketing and design best practices. And then, like I promised, we're going to talk a little bit about promoting yourself without feeling too cringy about it or transactional and icky. All right, so to get us started, hello, my name is Pim Her, for those who don't know me. I am a Hmong American refugee and immigrant. That's really informed just the way I live, my worldview, and it also is what informed what I majored in at SU. So I majored in creative advertising because I'm a flower child, storyteller at heart, but also with the policy and politics side of things. As an immigrant and refugee, I've always thought a lot about how the world works and how we should unpack power, systems of power. So that's why I studied at Newhouse and at Maxwell. And it's what led me eventually from sweet old Syracuse to Washington, D.C., where I did design for agencies and media companies such as Politico and the Washington Post. And in the last 10 years, I can't believe it, but it's been a whole decade since I graduated at SU. I've really dipped my toes in a couple of waters. So the first one being like design, working in agency spaces, thinking a lot about brand strategy and brand marketing, and then also moving more into UX UI design, which is just a fancy way of saying designing apps and websites. And then eventually I found my way into marketing and new business, pitching, development, thinking a lot about business type stuff and sales marketing at the Washington Post. And so that was a really fascinating segue. It was a very natural segue. And why does this all matter? How does it bring me to this moment here with all of you? It means that today, as a business owner, I run my own studio called HAWJ Studio. And there I do consulting work, but I also do a lot of coaching. And by the way, fun fact, I also coach with Jess here at SU as part of the career services team for alumni. So I could actually speak with all of you as a coach. And how this all ties together is a lot of times people come to me and say, hey, coach, can you help me think about how to brand myself? Like, what does that mean? And how do I come off with executive presence? Or how do I come across that way, even just virtually on my LinkedIn? And I say, well, let's think about it from a design angle. Do you need a logo? Do you need a brand? Or do you just want to tell your story and market yourself differently? Or let's say somebody at the C-suite may come and say, hey, I really need you to help me think about my marketing lens, right? And then I bring it all together and I coach them through that way. So that's really all the different perspectives that I bring to the table here with all of you. And the other thing I want to say before I move forward is a lot of times people get a little nervous about marketing themselves, not just because it may feel a little cringy or transactional, but because they may say, wait, but I have so many mini stories inside of me. Like you'll notice for myself on that third bullet, it says, oh, Pim did teaching, like she was an art teacher. How does that apply to everything else? Well, I want to show you that it's okay to string along your many different areas of focus and interest and to lean into it, as opposed to being afraid and feeling like you have to tell a very linear marketing story about yourself. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I just want to encourage you that when you listen in, don't listen in just with like a professional hat on where it's like, well, I've only done this one thing, or I know I only want to focus on that one thing. I really want you to bring your full self to the table and to think of your branding, not just like as a one-hit wonder, so to say. You have multiple notes inside of you, multiple multitudes. Let's bring it all to the forefront and figure out how to tell your story that way. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to the first slide that really brings us all together. Brand marketing, what is it? If you look on Google, there are 1,000 definitions. Let's make it sweet and simple for today. Brand marketing to me is really telling stories in a very strategic way. So this is basically, how do you tell the story of yourself or your brand? And how do you do that through the lens of strategic placement? So where do you tell your stories? And again, how do you differentiate it in an interesting way so that people notice it? And this is a spoiler alert, or just like a friendly PSA. Like it or not, you are a living brand. And by that I mean, some people are like, but I'm super old school, Pim. I don't want people to be all up in my business. But the truth is, this is the world that we're living in, right? We're not living in the 90s, not living in the 50s. It's not just about newspapers and magazines anymore. We are all, we have access to the internet and to social media. And if everybody is actually creating their own persona, then it will look weird if you don't have one. As I always say in my coaching, you have to learn how to play the game so the game doesn't game you or play you, right? You don't want to be played by the game. And so you have to learn the rules to break them. That doesn't mean you have to be on everything like TikTok and Instagram and all the rest of all the apps. But you got to choose maybe 2 or 3 primary ones to just show the world, I exist, this is my space, this is my platform, here's a little bit about myself. And related to this, when people really push back and say, but I hate that kind of stuff. I don't want to sound self-congratulatory if I can speak. And I'm like, true, that makes sense. But then this is also what I have to say. Like, your brand is also what people say about you when you're not in the room. In other words, you already don't have control of the full narrative, right? We can't control others. We can only control ourselves. So what can we do within our limits to tell the world, this is who I am, whether or not somebody agrees with that or not, right? Think of it like, if you are a restaurant, people will leave a Yelp review. It may be positive, it may be negative, but you want to try to your very best to present yourself as somebody who's 5 out of 5, right? So that's what I would want to say for anybody who is listening in, is kind of like, I'm here for a reason, but I still don't know if I'm fully bought in. I just want to encourage you to tell a story that you're proud of, that is true to who you are. Okay, so I'm going to share a couple of slides with some things that are screen grabs from my own website. This is not because I want to be like, oh, look at me, hair flip. This is actually because I want you to know I am practicing what I'm preaching, so that Pim's out here struggling, feeling just as challenged as you are about thinking about what pictures do I use? What is my story? So we're going to jump in. And there are times where you're going to see me looking at this side just for my double screen. So please don't mind me. I am still paying attention to all of you as I give this talk. So your brand ultimately is your story. What does that mean? That means that your audience is looking to learn about you. Can I trust you? Do I want to build rapport with you and engage with you? And do you have any legitimacy to be here? Those are the kinds of invisible questions your audience is thinking about. Your audience could be hiring managers, it could be peers in the industry, or just people who want to understand, what are you all about? And so when you have a website or a LinkedIn, you have to be really intentional about the stories you tell, the messaging that you use to come across as legitimate. And what do I mean about legitimate versus authentic? What I mean is, to be authentic is simply to seem original, right? But to be legitimate is to stand out in such a way that shows there's a valid reason why you're here, why you belong in this room, in this marketing segment, or whatever it may be. So I'll give you a very, very niche example. You'll notice in the screen grab, this is promoting more of my healing services through my studio. And the first line under the calling, which is really once you kind of go below the fold, it says, perhaps it shouldn't come across as a surprise that a shaman's great granddaughter would take a liking to holistic healing. I never saw it coming until I was deep in my own healing journey. So what am I saying here? Not all of you came here to get healing services. So don't worry, that's not why I'm promoting this. This is to show you that for somebody who actually wants these services, they'll probably feel a deeper sense of kindredness. Oh, Pim went through her own healing journey. Oh, wow, I want to talk to her because I think she'd understand. But also when it comes to authenticity and legitimacy, oh, wow, like she's coming from a lineage of healers. There's something deep and profound about that. And maybe they'll feel more drawn in as opposed to, oh, she just wants to do this. It's being offered from a deeper place. So you can see right here, that's how I established that deep connection with my audience immediately. Okay, and of course, I'm showing you how I've done it. Now the challenge for you on your side is how will you do this and interpret it in your own way for your own services or your own branding? Okay, so next up, we're going to talk a little bit more about how your brand, how you should present yourself in such a way that it's accessible, relatable, and also convincing. So this screen grab right here may not seem very exciting, but let me walk you through why this works. So my other audience, when I do more studio work as a consultant, I usually actually work for C-suite folks or folks at a director level or above. And what I do with them is I help them become thought leaders. I help them especially with their pitches and their keynote speeches. And so for this very unique audience, there are a couple of insights that I know about them because I've worked with them for over a decade now. One is they only trust you if they feel like you can do it better or at the same level as them. So these pictures on the right-hand side are very intentional. This is my visual signal to say, hey, I know what I'm doing. I've been in front of crowds and audiences, et cetera, et cetera. Like I can walk the walk and talk the talk. Then on the left-hand side, this is the insight. This particular kind of demographic, they don't want you to overwow them. They just want the facts and they want it fast. They're the kind of people, I don't know if you've ever met them, who will send you a full email in the subject line and it just says something like, meet me in 5 minutes, or something like that, right? They want short and sweet and to the point. And so, and they also tend to read newsletters like Axios' newsletters. And what does Axios focus on? Brevity, right? Less, not more. And so knowing that that's my audience, I don't want to wow them with 500 words. So I have quick bullets, just like the Axios newsletter style, and I just list out my credentials. And believe it or not, this kind of a simple web page, because I have a target audience that I understand, sometimes it'll yield me 20 or 30K. And that's because I know what I'm doing and I know who is my target. And so for you, you have to figure out what's approachable to your target audience. What works for me and my target audience may not be who you are trying to engage with. But hopefully you can kind of understand the rules of the road here, and then you can think about how do I apply this to my direct audience. Now you'll notice that the rest of the lines right here that I wrote talk about trust and vulnerability. The reason why I have that in the bottom descriptor is originally I created these slides to speak with a group of SU grad students who focused on art therapy. And for them, I wanted to have them remember, like if you step into the shoes of your target audience, if you were an art therapist, they're probably Googling you at like 10 p.m., 2 a.m. in the morning when they're feeling super stuck. Maybe they're thinking too much about past traumas, things that they really need to work through. They're feeling really vulnerable. And they don't want to just talk to anybody. They want to talk to somebody who will hold space for them, especially when they feel at their weakest, but also afraid to say, hey, I'm raising my hand and I really need help, right? And so your audience may not be at that extreme, right? Of, oh, I'm feeling super weak. But let's say they're a hiring manager. They still want to know why you over someone else. So again, make it easily accessible in terms of, yes, you can talk to me, and two, here's all my information up front so that you know what my value proposition is. Who am I and what do I have to offer to your team and the work that you want to do together? Okay, so we're going to move forward. Now let's talk a little bit about things outside of just thinking about your, like what we were talking about over here with your studio offerings or whatever you may offer in your storytelling. We're going to go a little bit deeper and think about presentation and format and platform. So right here, your digital brand identity, what I'm trying to argue here is it shouldn't be static. What you do on your LinkedIn or your Instagram or maybe an email newsletter or just a one-off email should all feel differently. And the reason for that is because audiences these days are used to getting stories packaged differently across different content platforms. So if they're on LinkedIn, they probably want something a little more serious and buttoned up and more informative. It should have a utility to their work, right? It should add something as a tool. But if somebody is on TikTok or Instagram, they probably want the LOLs. They literally want to laugh, right? And to be entertained. So you have to really think about your content and how you want to package it in such a way where it feels dynamic across platforms. Also, pro tip for you, if you are into marketing, Gen Z is really all about community building and communication and conversations across different platforms. So you want to make sure that whether or not you're targeting Gen Z, that you're really thinking about how to be dynamic and conversational in that way. Because what's probably going to happen is more marketers are in brands, even if it's not related to what you do, they're going to want to capture Gen Z as an audience and start to move in that direction. So I'm just giving you a pro tip to say, move in that direction because it's probably what's going to happen at the industry level anyway. So originally I was going to tell you a little bit more about my Instagram pictures here, but for the purpose of timing, I'm going to move to, I'll say one thing and then I'll really move to the third screen grab that you see here. So I'll just give you a quick lightweight example. On my Instagram, this is a carousel right here, the first two pictures that you see here. I know that my audience loves behind the scenes images. And when I take them kind of under the hood and explain my work and the how, not just the why or the what. So I love to share behind the scenes pictures and I know they always appreciate that. Now, a different example, that's not me, Dr. Judith Joseph. She is one of my favorite people on Instagram. She does a lot of education around therapy. And what I love is that she can go and she can talk at a government hearing and be super buttoned up. But you can also go onto her Instagram or her TikTok and be really silly and lean into meme culture so that she can educate people, but also do it in a way that is digestible for them. So you can kind of understand through that range, right? Just thinking about her, she can be really professional, right? And buttoned up in that government hearing, but she can also be more chill and relaxed. So think of that for yourself. How can you show your own dynamic personality through the stories that you tell across different platforms? All right, so moving on, another example of how this works, being more dynamic, but also engaging in such a way where you want people to feel like engaging with your brand is more like a verb, where it incites action. An example of this is my newsletter excerpt module that I have right here. So on my website, there's a page where I actually have this as just like, as you're scrolling through, it's a little call out and it's about a newsletter that I run. Now, the thing is, I know my audience and I feel most people would agree with this. Most people don't want another newsletter in their email, right? Unless you're waking up and reading like political content or like the top 5 morning news things or whatever, right? You don't want to be spammed. And so as much as I want people to read my newsletter, I don't want to come off spammy or, you know, in that way where people are like, no, that's not for me. So what I did instead was, it's kind of like a way to bait people who would actually be interested. So I shared a caption of one of my headlines from my newsletters, how an innovation designer became a life coach and holistic healer. I'm showing them, hey, my newsletter content is different. I don't need you to sign up with a field right now. I want you to click through, read more. That's the action I want them to take. And if you actually like it, then subscribe. And so that's my way of inviting people to come closer without immediately alienating them and making them feel like, oh, I don't want to just sign up for a newsletter, right? Because I could have easily just said, sign up for my newsletter. But I know people probably want that. So this is how you can use storytelling to your advantage. And again, incite action, make your brand feel like a verb, make sure that your audience feels engaged in what you are trying to offer and what you're trying to do and show them. Another way to do this is through imagery. So right here, you'll see that the pictures that I use are focused on showing the kind of action and energy you would feel if you were to work with me. So on the tarot reading one, and again, I'll pause and say footnote, yes, I know not all of you are into healing, that's okay, but for the purpose of education, for tarot, when people want to get a tarot reading, they want it to feel like a conversation. So the picture I'm using, as you can see, with my New Yorker hands moving, talking with my hands. I love talking with my hands, but that's the way to show literal engagement, right? And so that people will understand, hey, when I come to you for a tarot reading, you're going to be all in. Your whole body language will show me that you're committed to this conversation. And then with meditation and the healing on the right hand side, you'll see that these pictures are a lot more zen, a lot more relaxed and peaceful, just like what you would get out of those experiences, right? And so, think about it. What are the kinds of pictures that you want to show to give your target audience a feeling of that presents how they would feel if they were to engage with your work. And of course, in terms of pictures, these are now just some pro tips. When you use visuals, make sure you're well lit. Make sure that the color looks good, that your clothing matches your brand. All those little things actually need to be considered. And so one thing that I'll tell you that I talked about with the grad school students is they said, but what if I don't have a fancy camera? What if all I have is just an iPhone or an Android camera? I'm like, well, first off, all these cameras these days all have 3 lenses and more, so you don't have to worry. Your phone pictures are probably fine. But what you do need to work on is actually giving yourself permission to say, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to sit down and ask somebody to take a good picture of me. Or I'm going to literally ask my significant other or a close friend of mine to take 20 minutes out of their day to stage this photo shoot. As opposed to, it's just going to magically happen like a unicorn. I'll be out there and someone's going to take your great picture of me. No. You actually have to stage this, especially if you intentionally know, okay, I'm going to have 5 pictures that I'll need for my website, or I'm going to take my Instagram really seriously and create a professional Instagram. I'll need a good headshot and some other photos that I can feed into my content. You have to create that content. And what I say to that is take your brand seriously so that people take you seriously. If you show up just in a t-shirt, unless that's your brand, right? Like on your website, they may not really take you seriously, especially if you are somebody who's trying to be hired, let's say, to be a corporate lawyer, right? Unless that's your vibe and you're like, I want to come off friendly and casual. But you have to be intentional about how you design someone's experience around how they engage with you. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, and the rest of this section is going to be really focused on design and marketing best practices as opposed to the storytelling side of things. And so because I'm going to mention a lot about websites, I have 2 friendly PSAs before we move into this section. The first one may surprise you, but maybe not, because you already heard me say less is more as a concept. For me as a designer, I'm not about cluttered websites. I don't like super flashy websites or things where it's just a little too visual. And the reason is, if you've ever been on something, let's say like a restaurant's website, and you're just trying to order something to go, or just you want to get to the menu. Have you ever been like me where you get lost because like, why are there so many pop-ups? Why is there so much happening here? I don't even know where to look, right? And so it's really important actually to not do too much on your website. You want to make it clear and simple and easy to navigate. And that's why I'm actually a fan of just simple site builders like Squarespace or like WordPress. So that's just my pro tip for you. Don't worry about it if you're like, wait, Pim, but you're a designer. Are you going to tell me to design the world's most amazing website? No, your website just has to be functional. It just has to work for you. Okay, and then the other comment I want to make before we move further is just a friendly reminder. We're talking a lot about websites and Instagram or social media, but remember that your brand exists inside of a larger ecosystem, and it should be that way. So if you're a brand, your website is like your house. Your house needs to have a sidewalk. It needs to have a street so that people can turn the corner, right, and get to your house, right? And so think of that like the Google Maps, like what I've written here, where Google can lead someone your way towards you. So in this little metaphor that I've designed right here, think of it like this. Someone may go first, their first pit stop may be to your Instagram. Then they may be drawn towards your LinkedIn. And then finally, they may be drawn towards your website. It's okay to have this huge ecosystem where all the different platforms that you have talk with one another and lead back to one another. So just a friendly PSA for you. And now we're going to go all in. So this section is a bit like a brand and design 101. It's going to be interactive. But don't worry, I'm not your teacher. I'm not going to grade you on this. I just want to present food for thought for you and best practices so that you can walk away with a little bit more appreciation for how branding and design can work for you and not against you. I'm going to look to the side for a moment just to read my screen. So we're going to go over 5 things: design hierarchy, composition and layout, user experience and user journeys, CTAs, call to actions, we talked about that a little already, and then case studies and testimonials. So if you're like, I already forgot everything you said, Pim, don't worry, we're going to take it slow, one section at a time, and I'll explain everything. This part will be a little interactive. So first up, design hierarchy. What do you think this slide, like what is noticeable about this slide? If we thought about it through the lens of hierarchy, what feels super noticeable and big, like, oh, I got to pay attention to this, and then what feels like an afterthought? So feel free to chime in. I see that the chat's going, but if anybody wants to just come on the mic, please feel free to share your comments with us. I'd love to have at least one person walk us through it. Okay. Oh, Jason said the circle is in the focus. Exactly. Right? Like it's huge. It's the only shape that looks different. All the other diamonds are smaller, right? And so this is meant to be the focal point. And this may seem super obvious, but again, going back to that e-coms example, whether you're trying to order food or let's say clothes, sometimes a website is like, look at this. And you're like, I don't want to look at that. I'm trying to get to something else, right? So same thing is true for you when you are designing experiences, or even let's say an Instagram carousel. You want to really be intentional about what is that focal point so that people have a sense of hierarchy. In other words, what is less, I don't need to look at it this second. I can skim over it versus, oh, I got to pay attention. All right. Jonathan also added, yep, importance levels moving outwards. Excellent. So here's another example. It's not just about visual shapes or pictures. It's also, this is very important in terms of hierarchy when it comes to text. Your headline really should be big and bold for a reason. Don't waste people's time because that's probably where people will be paying attention. And then as the text gets smaller and smaller on the page, it's less important. So again, just be really mindful of how you use language and how you present language and visuals on your designs. Okay, now we're going to go back into more of an engaging, interactive moment. I'm giving you 2 examples here of screen grabs from templates. I'm curious if anybody wants to walk us through. You can just use one of these examples. What does the visual hierarchy look like here? And how does it work, or how does it actually work against the content in the messaging here? We'd love to have maybe one person either come on in the chat or on mic and walk us through their interpretation of design hierarchy here.
Say for the one on the left, it feels like the brand name, I guess, is what is big, and headline is what really draws the attention, while on the other one it feels like the products are really what are the focus.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Also, Lisa is a fellow 2013 grad, so hello. Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's all intentional, right? And so some people, you have to think about your own brand and how you want to present yourself. Are you trying to focus on your products, like Louisa is saying, or are you trying to focus on brand recognition? Or in this case, it's photography based, so it makes sense why their photos take up so much space and real estate on the screen. So think a little bit for yourself when you are selecting templates, let's say, for a web page. What kind of story am I trying to tell? How do I want to come across? What do I want to prioritize? A lot of pictures, text, it's all up to you. Okay, so next one, this is all about composition. High level composition is about flow, making sense, and function. In design, we say form follows function. In other words, we have to think about what we're trying to make functional here and what works, and then design around that functionality. So a door is a great example. So this one's super easy. It's a gimme, but would love to have someone come in. Which door is actually a functional door here? And tell us why out of these 3 doors. I give a moment, look to the side to see if the chat's moving. Go for it. I hear somebody.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the door on the left.
Yeah, okay.
Handle on the right side, so you can pull it and open the door.
Yeah, and then this seems super obvious, but Jason, walk us through the other 2 doors. What's not working with those 2 doors?
For the second option in the middle there, the doorknob is on the top, so you wouldn't be able to reach it. And kind of the same with the third one. The doorknob is in the middle bottom, and you're not going to really reach down there to be able to pull the door open.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm only 5 feet, but even I wouldn't want that door, right? Because I'd be like
Yeah.
crouching over to open it, right? And
Right.
it just wouldn't work out. Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much for sharing your POV there. Yeah, and so for the rest of the group and Jason too, like this seems super basic, but think about it. How many times have you been on a website where the button for something is buried and you're like, where do I click? How do I get to the next thing, right? These things really do matter. It takes 2 seconds to kind of just make it obvious, but a lot of times when you go into, let's say, like a Squarespace or a Wix and you're trying to build your own website, you get so overwhelmed with all the design decisions that you stop thinking about, but realistically, what's important here? What kinds of instructions am I trying to create so that it makes it easy for my user to actually move forward with my website? So, just be intentional about how you are composing all the elements on your page in a way where they flow naturally, and in a way where it makes sense for the audience to engage with it. Okay, and then I also see Joe's comment in the chat. The first one's functional. Exactly. Form follows function. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about one area of the design practice. This could be something I could talk about for days, and don't worry, I'm not going to do that. I know I only have 1 hour with all of you, but this is user experience. User experience design and user journey design is all focused on what this arrow shows: go, movement, right? We talked about, hey, show people where to go, help them navigate, right? User experience is trying to understand as a discipline, what do my users want to experience? And how can I create an experience that wraps around that? And then in that process, how do I study the journey that they want to take? And how do I create a site map that maps out where they would naturally want to go? That's really directional, right? That's why I have this arrow here. So now for you, if you're like, well, but Pim, I'm not trying to study to become a designer. What do I need to know? Just ask yourself these simple questions that I have written right here. Have you considered your users' motivations and their needs? And does your website reflect and address that at a visual level and at a copywriting level? And if the answer is yes, great. We don't need to do anything else. But sometimes you got to challenge yourself and keep it real and be like, I think I made this website may be a little bit too much like navel gazing. I made it work for me, but it may not work for my audience. So always be honest about that. And one quick way to check that is doing what in design we just call A/B testing, right? Maybe you send out your website to a couple of folks and you say, does it work this way? Would it work better this other way? Whether that is the way your text is on a button or your images that you're using. And again, this is a little bit more in depth and this the whole discipline, so it's more complex. So I'll keep it high level here, and in the Q&A, if you want to talk more, you can ask your questions then. Okay, so let's actually apply our learnings that we've talked about. With user experience and user journey design, it's about the journey, right? It's about composition, it's about hierarchy, all the things we've been talking about. So we're going to build it all together here. Does anyone want to walk us through the user journey here, or the user experience, either of the website or this resume design? Again, kind of similar questions: what's working, what's not working? How do you see things engaging with one another in terms of the elements on these pages? So feel free to either come on the mic or put your answers in the chat. And I'm just going to put the chat back up on my second screen so I make sure I don't miss anything. We'd love to have maybe one person come and chime in.
Yeah, so the resume, I mean, just with classic reading style, then we look at what's at the top first and go down the page. So this person has what's going to be the most important stuff that they want the person reading the resume to see first. And then with the web page, I feel like the images really pop out before all of the text even. I didn't dive as deep into this one, but
no, this is great. Thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate you chiming in. Yeah, exactly. And one thing I would say for the resume is it may even be helpful for them to make their name just maybe 1 or 2 points bigger. It doesn't have to be 50 points bigger, but just to make that more noticeable, like, hey, I exist, I'm here. But you're totally right. They're packaging their content in a way where it's really easily read and digestible. Let's see, Heather is also adding. For the website, there are 2 somewhat equally prominent CTAs, which can be a little confusing or misleading without being able to truly read the text from here. You're right. There is a little bit like what's important here. And so that's something else to consider is how do you make sure that you don't have too many calls to actions all on the same page? Because then your audience may say, wait, I have whiplash. I don't know where to go. Okay, I see Luisa's raised her hand. Please feel free to come on the mic.
Yeah, I did also feel like obviously the website creates a tone very specifically with the use of like a lot of images of plants, and like it feels like it has a very specific style. And the other one, the resume just feels very like non-specific. Like it's hard for anyone to like really get a sense of the person's like style, personality, or brand.
Yeah. So great things to consider, right? Like some things are working. Heather's, like I hear you on like that CTA is maybe confusing, but Louisa, you're right. Like, so some things that are working, the imagery, CTA may need a little bit of help, right? But you're totally right. It's really important to own your style and your personality and to put that at the forefront. Very important. And I'll have a fun slide later that shows a little bit more about the need to own your personality. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. We keep talking about the CTA already, so I'm not going to say too much, but always make sure you have a call to action, right? Earlier, we talked about having a bias towards verbs and action steps and inciting movement, right, from your audience. In marketing, we call that conversion. What are you trying to lead to a sense of conversion rate, right? Like maybe conversion is hire me. Literally call me up and hire me, right? A lot of you on this call are probably trying to have that as your call to action. Other people, if you are a freelancer, it's partner with me, collaborate with me, bring me on to work, do special work with your team. But yeah, you want to have a bias towards taking action steps. And sometimes the CTA, it may be more invisible, and the conversion is more about buy into what I am saying about myself in my story. So it doesn't have to be like a full nod, but really I want to encourage you to always think about that at the back of your head. What is my call to action? Now, because I do career coaching and all of you are here for probably through that lens, I do also want to give you a separate pro tip about call to actions. When you're networking with people, and by the way, this is an aside from the design stuff, but when you're networking with somebody, at the end of that conversation, always have at the back of your head, what is my intentional call to action? What do I want to get out of this person and this engagement? It doesn't have to be something that feels squeamish or icky, right? But like a perfect example is you just want to network. You just want to grow your network. So at the end of that conversation, you say, these are my top 3 tips. If you've been on a coaching call with me, you already know what I'm going to say. Tip number 1, you say, thank you so much. I want to show my manners. Number 2, acknowledgement. Here's something specifically that I learned from you. Wow, I really appreciate the way you talked about XYZ topic. Or, oh, wow, I'll never think of this topic the same again. Whatever it may be. Number 3 is the most important one. This is your CTA. You say, now that you've heard my story, is there anyone else that you know who you would recommend I talk to? That's how you open doors for yourself with this door metaphor right in front of us. Like you ask somebody else to open the door for you. So you don't have to go knocking, hey, can someone open up today? No, someone's saying, yeah, let me open the door for you. I got you. But again, it goes back to that CTA. You have to have the spine to go out of your way to say, now that you've heard my story, can you enter the CTA here? And again, moving back into our conversation here, branding and marketing, this looks like at the end of a LinkedIn post. If you're interested in learning more about my services, contact me here, and you give your email, or please feel free to DM me, right? That's how simple it can be. Here's a link, here's the action, make it sweet and simple, because people, they don't have all day to be with you. So you want to make it as easily presentable and clickable as possible. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to study this call to action for just 2 more moments right here. This is our alumni page. Jess, if you wouldn't mind putting a link in the comments to our alumni page. I want to be really cheeky since we're talking about all these things alumni engagement related. So what do you think the call to action is on either of these pages? The first page is a screen grab to the home page. And then the second page is one of our most popular pages, the alumni career services page. In other words, if you're getting lost in the sauce, what I'm trying to say here is, what is the strongest message? What do you think that call to action is, or the most important thing that we want you to walk away with is? So I'll open up the chat in case anyone wants to say anything in the chat, or if someone wants to come on the mic, feel free to come on the mic as well. I know, did I tire you all out by making you contribute too much to the conversation? Let's have at least one volunteer pop up and say something. I feel like I'm back teaching in the classroom and there are crickets. Event, making a gift. You're right, Louisa. Mm-hmm. Oh, and I think there was somebody else.
Pim, is it engagement and trying to basically have that connection amongst alumni? It looks like that's front and foremost for all of this.
Yeah, totally, Joe. Yeah, and then you'll see, right? Like if you even think about it on the right-hand side, and this may have been such an obvious thing that you're like, what is she asking us to look for here? But like even on the right-hand side, right? Like career counseling is really important. A lot of people are coming to our office for that. So we're not going to bury that. And you did say, don't bury the lead, right? And so that's why career counseling on the right-hand side and job search stuff, we're not going to hide that. Hey, we know you're here for this. Here it is. And then the second two tabs that you see, or boxes that you see there, connect with the Orange Network, other career coaching type stuff. There's more information that's a little bit deeper down. And yes, totally, you're totally right on the nose right there with the right hand or the left hand side with the homepage. So thank you for all your comments, y'all. Really appreciate this engagement. And then next up, we have case studies and testimonials. This one is something that is a little bit of an aside, but it's also really helpful. When you think about your brand marketing, your designs, etc., the visuals can only do so much. People love connecting with other people and hearing straight from the source. And so sometimes it's not hearing from you as the source, but hearing from other people who you've already helped. So make sure that you have some strong testimonials and recommendations that can really back up your brand and say, you know, like for instance, if it's a testimonial about like my career coaching, sometimes people want to hear from someone else, right? Oh, wow, when I worked with Pim, she helped me with X, Y, and Z. That's why I'd want to work with her again. I definitely encourage other people to work with her. And for, you know, Joe or John or somebody else on this call, right? Like somebody else may say something else about you, but you want to capture that and you want to put that at the forefront of your story too, so that people know you're the real deal. It's sort of like in marketing and branding, how we talk about how word of mouth is super powerful, but you can't just have word of mouth when someone's reading your website. So sometimes you have to kind of create that engagement through the form of a testimonial. And same thing goes for your LinkedIn. That's a great place to get those recommendations so that people can tell a different version of your story. One pro tip I can give you about that, by the way, is sometimes you can go out of your way and ask a former colleague or someone who you know is an advocate for you and say, I really want people to know that I'm really strong at, let's say, communications or strategy. Can you specifically write about that in a recommendation for me on LinkedIn? And that way, you've given them the talking points. If they agree, they'll write something really great about what you can do through the lens of communications and strategy. Okay, so we're almost at the end of the hour and of this talk. But before I close out, I can't leave you without talking a little bit about this. Usually people will be like, intellectually, I get that. That's in my brain. But oh my God, I feel like the person who's always the loudest in the room, I hate being that person. I feel like they're too loud and obnoxious and I don't want to be like that. I totally hear you. So the rest of these slides are focused on how to not feel cringy. And so I'm going to give you an example that you may not expect today. So we already know Otto the Orange. I love Otto, but I'm going to give you two mascots that I love because they're so ridiculous, Gritty and Duo. So why am I showing you these silly, ridiculous mascots? It's because I think they can actually teach us a lesson or two. Gritty and Duo are both kind of obnoxious, quote unquote, but more in a loving way, right? Like a lovable way, a personable way. Why do they work so well? They work so well to me because they know how to lean into their strengths and their character. Remember I said earlier, I was like, oh, I have a slide that I'll talk about. This is that slide. Lean into what makes you weird, quote unquote, weird, strange, unique, authentic, and legitimate. You don't have to be here feeling super corporate and buttoned up. When you want to lean into your brand, you have to lean into what makes you unique and viable and valuable. So maybe you don't have to be gritty out here, right? But you do have to show what gives you grit. You have to show the world what gives you color and what makes you stand out in a meeting, let's say. So don't be afraid to lean into a little bit of the silly, a little bit of the strange, or whatever it is. Nobody wants to hire someone who's super vanilla and has nothing to add to the conversation or to the work. And so, again, you don't have to become unhinged, but just think a little bit about that, of how you can show the world your unique colors. And if you're feeling really shy and you're like, well, prove it to me, Pim. How does that work? I'll tell you my own personal story. So about a year ago, I made a promise to myself that I would post at least once a week on LinkedIn just to see what that would yield in terms of user engagement, followers, and just creating hopefully an interesting conversation on that platform because I was kind of underutilizing LinkedIn. And a lot of my work is around career coaching. And I know a lot of people are consuming that kind of content on LinkedIn. So I thought, okay, I should put my own spin on it. It should be unique. But I was also a little afraid, right? Going back to the cringe of, man, all my former colleagues from the Washington Post, some who are really great writers are going to see this. And then I kept thinking, man, I'm going to tell my personal stories. My former bosses and colleagues are going to find out. They may not like what I have to say. I'm scared, right? So there were a lot of reasons why I was like, should I do this? And then I also thought, man, at the end of the day, some of my conversion things, like my CTAs will be like, do you want to work with me? I'm like, well, people think I'm being too salesy, right? So again, lots of things. I'm trying to climb the mountain, but I'm afraid to climb, right? And a lot of things are keeping me from climbing that mountain. But I decided I'm going to do it my way. So I posted content that was really personal, really sometimes emotionally raw and intense, but things that I felt no one else was saying, but it was important. And these were also things that I was hearing in my private practice as a coach. So things about like workplace PTSD. You'll notice at the bottom left-hand corner, it says new tapestry, see needle and thread. How workplace PTSD repeats itself. I was like, I'm going to go all in. Like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to talk about the things I actually want to see on LinkedIn. And instead of it fighting against me, working against me, it's actually what allowed me to be recognized as one of LinkedIn's top voices. This is a really unique program. It basically promotes 250 experts out of the entire global LinkedIn community. That's less than 0.5% of the entire community. And I was on a Zoom call with the editors, and somebody said, well, why did you choose us? Just us 250. And they said, it wasn't because of followership. And I was like, I know that because I don't have the biggest followership for sure. And they're like, we chose you because of the way you tell your stories. We chose you because we believe the content that you say is valuable and matters to our community. Why am I sharing this with all of you? I want to encourage you to lean into your uniqueness. For me, I knew, right? You know, by now that I'm a healer, that I go deep, that I talk a lot, and that I really like want to bring people in. So I told stories that I felt were important. And instead of it, again, working against me, it's what allowed LinkedIn to say, we're going to lift your voice up. So I want to encourage you to do the same thing your way, right? So what makes you unique? What are the stories you really want to tell that you want to push out there so that people see and know you, and let them know you for real? It's a little scary, right? You may feel a little unhinged like this right here, but it may just be the thing that makes you stand out because you actually showed your true colors and your stories and what really matters to you. So that's really what I want to leave you with, is just that encouragement to be real and to show the world who you really are, because that's the best way to market yourself and to stay authentic. Then it's not about going viral for being a fake version of yourself. It's you. You're the real deal. Okay, so with that, thank you so much for your time, y'all. We have a little bit of time for some Q&As. And don't be a stranger. I'll thank you for the claps. Definitely join us at SU. The last QR code that you see here is our coaching calendar if you want to meet with Jess or me. We love meeting with all of you and supporting you on your career journeys. And I guess I'll go from right to left this time. I have my website posted here along with my LinkedIn newsletter if you want to just stay in touch. And just know that like our team here at SU, we really care about you and we're really invested in your growth. So thank you for being here. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm going to stop my share. Yeah. And would happy to also just make this a dialogue with anybody who wants to chime in. I see Joe's raised his hand, so please feel free to just chime in.
Sure. Thank you so much for this, first of all, Pim. I had one question about taking basically a nugget from your website and extending it across your brand, and how deep you feel that probably has to go. Like, can it just be your picture that kind of goes from your website to your Instagram, to your LinkedIn, or whatever it is? Or do you think there's more things that you should carry across? Are we talking some logos? Are we talking backsplashes, that kind of thing? Curious about your thoughts.
Yeah. I'm the kind of person who actually feels like it's more refreshing for your audience to tell different stories. So use the same picture, but maybe tell a different story, or tell that story, but maybe one place is more in depth than the other. And so I'm trying to think through the best way to package everything that I'm thinking in my head really quickly. In other words, you should have that common through line, right? Like, here's the ambience or the intention is the same, but tell it differently because you want to come off again dynamic. You don't want to look like it was just copy and paste. I see a lot of brands doing that still, where it's like their Twitter and their Instagram says the same thing twice. Well, if your audience is the same, you didn't tell them something new. They're going to start to ignore you on one of those platforms because they're like, I'm not getting anything new from this person. But again, it goes back to they engage with content differently. So again, it's not that you can't do it. It's just try to interpret it in a way that makes sense for each platform and who's using that platform. Does that answer the question? Okay. And then a different way to think about that is what I do for myself is if I'm like, let's say this is really how I do it. So like, I'll be out in the wild with my boyfriend, like, walking along a line of trees. I'm like, this is it. That's the shot. And then what I'll do is I'll make him take like 3 different pictures. and I'll use one for my website and then a different angle on my Instagram, so that if I link people to my website, they're like, oh, hey, it's almost the same. They're cousins of each other, but it feels more dynamic because technically it is different. But again, right, this goes, you know, how I was like, be really intentional about how you take those pictures. In my head, I'm already thinking in advance, how am I going to use this? Or I may say, hey, I'm going to do a vertical shot and a landscape shot. Lisa, who's on this call, is a producer and went to New House with me, and she's always teaching me about those tips where it's like, you know, present the story in all the different angles and ways and shots, because you don't know which one is going to land. And so that's my quick answer for you. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? And another thing I always love to ask too are, what are some of your takeaways? It doesn't have to be a question, but I'm always curious, like, what actually resonated, and what really moved you, or what did you take away as homework for yourself?
I was just going to say, and it goes along the lines of what Joe was saying. It's like, what's refreshing about thinking about the brand, like your personal brand this way, is that it's not just about what you do on like Adobe to create a brand, like visually, but it's about like the tone that you're setting for yourself as an individual, as opposed to just like you know, things that you produce visually. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's what you're getting at more. And as someone who like sees you post on all the platforms and stuff, I do feel like Pim has that brand of like, it's a person that you're almost buying into, as opposed to just like the services that they're packaging outside of themselves, you know? So I think that that's like the like way that is more refreshing to think about branding than just you know, what we have to build, you know, what outputs we have to put out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much more than just the marketing funnel and trying to like be like, at this stage of the funnel, I'm going to try and engage with people in this way. Yeah, totally. Anyone have any other comment? Oh, go for it.
Yes, I would like to just say, because I graduated from Syracuse a number of years ago, but the branding and what you're talking about, the creativity. So I can be kind of stuck in my ways, but the idea of you have to be authentic to yourself. And so I think about what people really like about me. I'm a math coach in Baltimore City, so I teach teachers how to teach math. Like, I can use a lot of your ideas. So it wasn't even about what year you graduated from Syracuse. You can use your ideas at any age. So I like that. And so that was one of the things I was worried about. I was like, it's probably geared for those people who are like 25 and under. No, it wasn't. And so I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you know, that's the other thing too. It's like, I feel like, because I coach people across, you know, like all age groups, sometimes the people who are like super green and new, they're worried like, will anyone want to hire me? I only have 1 year of experience. And then some folks are super seasoned. They're worried about very different things, right? But it's like at each step of the way, in the same way we always need mentors, we always want to tell our story. And think of it like someone always has something to gain from what you have to share about your perspective, your lived experiences, your institutional knowledge, your industry knowledge. So definitely lean into it. Be creative with your storytelling and show people like, I exist and I have something to say. And trust me, people will appreciate it. Something that I'll say, and then Carlene, I hope I'm saying your name right, would love to have you chime in, is there are times where I'll post my newsletter and I'll get very low like engagement on my LinkedIn. Like nobody is really liking it or hearting or commenting. Then for the same post, I'll get like 3 text messages within an hour. Hey, thank you so much for writing that. That really resonated with me. So sometimes I don't define my success by the numbers, right? The stats that I see on my dashboard. I define it by how people like call back that, or like I'll be in a conversation 2 months later and somebody will be like, you know what you wrote that one day about that thing? Wow, it really stayed with me. And I'm like, I wish I would have known first off that mattered to you, because that's really cool. And on that day I was wondering, is that it? But then those are the moments like, I have to keep on going, because sometimes people are just really quiet, but you don't know what is really going to resonate and what they're going to pick up on. So I encourage you, keep going, tell your story. People are listening and watching more than you may realize. Okay, Carlene, tell me if I'm pronouncing your name right, and then please join in.
Hi, good day. You are pronouncing my name right. Thank you so much for your presentation and all the insights. Even working in the world of marketing, you can continue learning. And my highlight is Gritty, the mascot. I had no idea he existed or it existed. It's hilarious and such a testament to adopting the weird. So That's actually one of the notes I made, and also encouragement to be more unique. So thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like we're really lucky, y'all. Like, I feel like maybe 10, 15 years ago, if somebody were giving this presentation, they wouldn't be saying what I'm saying now. I'll just really be silly and on the nose, but when I was at Newhouse, it was 2009, way back in time. And basically, I showed a meme campaign in class, in my advertising class. And my professor looked at me. He came from Madison, Avenue, and was like, I don't get it. And I was like, sir, you don't get it now, but you will one day. Like, this Tyra Banks meme is where it's at. And then eventually now, right? Like, we're hired to create memes sometimes in marketing, and it leans into the weird and into the moment. So it's really about, just being adaptable. Okay, Pamela. Oh, I think you're on mute, but I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm Pamela Tuzzi. I'm class of when the wheel was being invented. I'm a certified ACC coach and breakthrough coach, and I work primarily in transition. And I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about when you're branding yourself and you talk about being authentic, and I think that's awesome. But also to don't be afraid to I think what if I hope I said your name right. What she said, how you connect on LinkedIn is very important, and how you do it. And Pim gave a really, really great example. And it's kind of like, offer something as well as asking. And because I get hit on LinkedIn all the time, and someone who takes the time, number one, to take a look at my LinkedIn and make a comment about it, I know they took the time. And then anybody who really asks me for 15 minutes or whatever, 99% of the time I give it, because I believe to pay it forward. So, but in branding yourself, I think when you did that circle, it's like you have to present something called the UVP, which is your unique value proposition. What's your jam? Because you can have that thing and all these other skills around it. So what's your, maybe it's graphic writing, maybe it's doing memes, maybe it's public relations, whatever. And Pim, I don't know, I was in Newhouse as well. I don't know if you know Professor D'Angelo. He's chair now of the PR department.
Awesome.
We did our undergrad together, so that's how long ago I was there. So if you guys, when you're presenting your unique value proposition, and come with an attitude of, I'm here to solve your problems, because that's what job hunting is all about. And when you have a conversation, you ask questions, you interview them, you ask them questions. And then when they tell you, it's like, well, what's most challenging? It's kind of that attitude, what can I help you out with? And then you bring in your skills and show them how you can help them solve their problem, instead of regurgitating your resume and all that kind of stuff. But it's a journey, and we're always moving forward with it. And you guys, if you want, you can look me up, and I'd be more than happy to help. And I know Pim, I'd love to talk to you too, because I think you're awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. And there's a page on the alumni page, by the way. I don't know if, Pamela, you're part of it, but for all of you to know, that we have a separate page full of coaches who studied at FU, alums, basically, who have gone on to open their own private practices, and they've all agreed to offer one free session for alums. So like the folks on this call right here. So make sure that you see that. Oh, sorry, go for it.
I just want to say one last thing. And also too, there's something called the International Coaching Federation, which is the umbrella sanctioning body for coaches. And so that's just out there for anyone who's considering coaching.
Because 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that we're at time, and Jess is somebody who's very like, hey, let's be prompt. So Jess, I want to give you the final words. Anything you want to add on our way out?
Other than thank you, I want to let everyone know where they find the next event. So just in general, for who's left on the call, I know a few have dropped off, but I wanted to let you know that all you have to do is go to alumni.syr.edu, and easy website to remember. And then you can see these tabs at the top. So the Alumni Career Services that Pim referenced a few times, that's where the list is of alumni career coaches. Each one offers you a free meeting. After that, it's their livelihood. And then you can click here where it says attend an event, and you'll see quickly that it has the date and where it is. So this one's virtual, this one's in Syracuse, this one's in Atlanta. So you'll see if it's near you and you can go to an in-person opportunity. And I will have a shameless plug moment for the next virtual event, which is on May 14th. 5 Steps to Discovering Your Professional Joy. I've listened to this already. This is from Dean Conkle, who is the Dean of Hendricks Chapel. His voice and the way he speaks to you, he's just a calming presence. So if this is something that you would just like to add to your day that day, I will tell you that genuinely it will be a benefit. So again, alumni.syr.edu. And thank you all for who is still here. And if you linger for another minute and you want to ask him or myself a question, we are happy to help.